Thank you for coming, for attending this Dharma talk. Thank you for all of your help in supporting this community, both by attending, by practicing, and by financially supporting us. We need your help. Please continue if you can. So this evening's Dharma talk has an interesting topic or title, and I wish to cover this, and when I give you the title, kind of a statement that is kind of maybe a little bit off-putting, or you might immediately start to disagree with. That's the idea. That's why you have that. There's space up here. But I want to talk to you about why I title it that, so that I can get you to look at a particular dynamic in consciousness that meditation practice, mindfulness practice will help you begin to address. I should begin because it takes a while to do this. You can't just be a weekend warrior, let alone meditate for 3 years and have some kind of wonderful outcome. That is unlikely to happen. The title of the talk is, what was it? Doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter what happens. Just in case you didn't hear me, it doesn't matter. You know what matter is? It doesn't matter what happens. The whole idea of an occurrence in the first place, the whole idea of matter in the first place, and the whole idea of the word doesn't, and the whole idea of happens. Look closely at what those words, those concepts are pointing towards. Those concepts are not what is being brought about or implied or pointed out here, just like a recipe is not necessarily a meal. Well, of course it matters what happens. If we want to get this, then we need to do this, 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 and this in order to get that. It's just that on the spiritual path, which also involves in more ways than one would possibly imagine or conjecture, the psychological path, which is tied in with a fundamental understanding of who this is, and what we're up to. What is it to be alive and be a living being? And when I say it doesn't matter what happens, what I'm endeavoring to help you see is that the outcome of something means a lot if you're trying to fix the tire on your car. But that's the tightness, the complete relative cause and effect structure is extremely vivid, extremely in your face, and has no outliers in terms of, well, maybe this will happen, or maybe this will, maybe that won't agree, or maybe this will disagree. Whereas, even though there's some there, you might not be able to find anything your jack might break, or possibly you might have 2 flat tires instead of 1. I mean, it could be very simple kind of things that go awry, even in the mundane world, which is pretty predictable. But you cannot predict anything in the mind stream. This is why some people who seem to be living a very nice, loving, happy life suddenly go into deep difficulty, anxiety, or depression. And then what does our society do with it? And again, when I say, what does our society do with it? I'm not saying it's wrong to do this. I'm just saying it is a particular way that maybe this is what you need to do. Drug yourself to cover it up or to stop it so you don't feel bad. This is a misunderstanding of the nature of the mind, the nature of the spiritual path. The nature of the spiritual path, as it's understood over here, is to see what this is, not to come in and start working on it, preparing it, covering it up based on what you think it is. If there's no mind training, you may be very unlucky to have a powerful intellect and a powerful thinking process that won't even be open-minded or well-favored enough to even look at another option, because you're so completely happy and satisfied with what you think. Ever had that problem? I'm talking to you. Yeah. And who else? I have that problem. That's how I know about it. Everyone in here has an issue around grasping thoughts and trying to find some kind of a foothold or reference point so that we can get some kind of security in our life, some kind of freedom to not be at the mercy of these intense negative emotions. Maybe you don't have those. Maybe you don't have any negative emotions. I doubt that you'd be in this room if you don't have some negative feelings and emotions that are perplexing to you. So it doesn't matter what happens. Does it? Yes, it matters. But to put that at the forefront, well, if we do this and this, what will happen? If we do this and this, if we don't do this, then what will happen? To do too much of that conjecture, too much of that guesswork, it just covers up what needs to be seen. It's like being in the front of, to go back to repairing a tire on a bicycle or something. It goes back to just knowing something's wrong, but not being able to look at it. Whereas in the relative world that is strongly relative, physical things matter, you can actually see the flat. But in the mind stream, you can't see the difficulty of why things aren't rolling or going smoothly there. And so what do we do? Depends on what society is saying, or what your doctor's saying, or what your therapist is saying. And again, I want to go back and say, I'm not correcting any of that. You or me or any of us may get a lot of help from a therapist, a psychiatrist, or from taking Wellbutrin. I'm not against that. I'm just saying that without taking anything, without doing anything, without hiring anybody, without even paying anyone a fee, this is what I'm talking about, this Community Mindfulness Center. Even here, we have to charge a little bit. If you come to this retreat, you're paying something, probably not very much. This is not about making money. It's about helping people where they're at, and especially helping people who don't know where they're at and have to be, that needs to be pointed out to them. So this is about assisting people who have the openness to even try something, to come into a community mindfulness center or into a meditation hall, a Zendo, study these particular teachings if you want to go that far into it about what this is about, how this works. It doesn't matter in the sense that if you focus on that too much on the spiritual path and on the path of working with the mind stream, working with the psychology, you go too much into that, then you misunderstand. And when I say misunderstand, I'm saying it's a big deal. You misunderstand what is happening in the mind, you try to fix it. There's nothing to fix. If you go take an attitude towards the mind, you're trying to fix something, then what you will do is you will work on something you will actually manufacture the defect with your thought, your mind, with your concepts, your ideas, your judgments, your evaluations. They're called symptoms. Now that works quite a bit, but you notice the whole thing gets turned around because the motivation there is not fundamentally to help people. It is to make money. That's why there's no cure for something that I have is diabetes, because I'm sure there's a cure for that, but it's hidden because it's easier to sell, or it makes more money to sell metformin or all the other drugs that help with that situation, not to mention insulin. This is one example. That would give you an idea how complicated just the relative area where you can actually have a chemical that's a thing, or you have all of the other things that are used in science that have a dynamic that is somewhat traceable, somewhat has some kind of evidentiary to it, so you can track what it's doing. When this is brought together with that, it's brought together with that, it's brought together with that. So what are we doing with doesn't matter what happens. What I'm endeavoring to do, and I think I said that in a talk with Sunday maybe, and I have some people's when I'm saying we want to have a community mindfulness center, but it doesn't matter what happens. This doesn't mean we don't work like hell with our intention. All the energy needs to go into intention, because you don't know what's going to come out the other end. But if you start trying to focus on something, I'm not saying you don't have a goal, but I'm saying to focus on the goals of misunderstanding, not only in the level of the spiritual path, in just about every other level. I'm happy to respond to questions right now or in 10 more minutes after I talk some more. Yes.
If we're engaging with someone who is very sick, in pain, poor, homeless. And we're endeavoring to hold that idea of it doesn't matter what happens. We're certainly not going to communicate it that way in that interaction. So how?
This is for you. This is not for them. You're not going to tell somebody who has no way of even access, who has been trained, conditioned, excuse me for interrupting you, but it has intense conditioning. Please don't help anybody without their permission. And if they ask you for help, make sure they're ready to help the kind of, receive the kind of help that you might be prepared to give. And maybe the only thing you can do with that person is feed them. Maybe the only thing you don't try to necessarily change somebody's understanding or psychology or belief. Be very respectful. I've said this dozens of times. Be very respectful of people's confusion. And if you are, then it's possible, if you're not in there trying to judge them or evaluate them or change them, then you start to see kind of behind the scenes of what has been happening to them, maybe for their whole life, the conditioning of having to push, fight, grasp. Go ahead.
I think more what I'm trying to understand is if someone comes into the community mindfulness center and they are
Yes.
suffering in that way. I think it seems to me that holding the space of that, holding that intention in our own mind, in our own way of interacting, might be a way to be helpful to not interfere. And I'm just trying to get a better understanding of how that interaction might happen skillfully.
So first of all, I'll try to address that. First of all, don't hold an intention, return to it. Don't hold anything. Anytime you start to maintain anything, then it turns into a concept, because you know the way you can't hold on to consciousness. And there are no separate things anywhere. If you think there are, you'll be deluded by your imagination, and you'll think this is real and that's unreal. This is successful and that's unsuccessful. This is what happens. Don't maintain it. Return to it. Return. In our situation, you return to the attention to be with all things. Whatever shows up, don't agree, don't disagree, don't ignore. It's just there. It's just occurring. Yes, sir.
Shoto bowing. Just watching the community mindfulness center take shape, like literally with the architect. There was a lot of times I noticed that you would have to kind of push them back into line with what you were wanting, because they would drift off with the drawing. Or were you concerned with the outcome with the building?
I'm still concerned with it. So yeah, I'm very concerned with outcomes. I am very, but it's not about maintaining that. It's about returning to it. The picture that keeps showing up that is irritating to me is that we gave them photographs of the sculptures that I ordered from China, were custom made, a figure of the Buddha, a figure of Ananda, and a figure of Mahakashyapa. Then I wanted them to use those. I must have given them photos at least once or twice, didn't I? 3 times. Thank you. I didn't want to be too exorbitant with my numbers. Where's Andrea? If I get any numbers wrong, let me know, okay? So what I'm saying there is, when I saw that they just couldn't take a picture of that, they didn't have the software, I guess, is what Unya was saying. They didn't have the software to do it.
That's what I understood, but I
But just to use that picture in place of the drawing of the stage or the platform, the altar area, and they're using, I don't know where they got those Buddha figures from, but they look more like aliens to me.
Mm.
So I'm not sure if I got close to what you were looking for, but it sure triggered something I was looking for.
Shoto bowing. I'm wondering, in the midst of, it looks like you're caring about the outcome. What does it mean that it doesn't matter what happens?
So it doesn't matter what happens. I'm saying you have to be very careful not to get fixated on outcomes, because everything is continually in flux. The nature of an illusion is, one, that it's holding still, and the other one is that it's moving. Those are both illusory. It's not doing either one. Yes,
Kelsey Bowing. So in this example where you do care about the outcome or
Yes.
did, are you reminding yourself
sure,
conceptually that it doesn't matter?
yes. Yes, I am. I don't have to even remind myself because I know it doesn't matter. Because I am functioning in an illusion as an illusion. And therefore I can take any direction at any time. I can turn on a stack of dimes without making a sound. And it's not so because I'm so wonderful, it's because there isn't anyone here. And I'm not saying, believe what I'm saying. And you can even disagree and say, well, Sokuzan's just so wonderful and so proud of himself for being a nobody. And I think I'll go study under somebody else. Yes.
Kelsey Bowing. You've said before that, or I'm hearing it as at some point you would care less about what is happening or care less about what you're feeling.
Some of that, yes, the emotions come and go and they don't belong to anyone. You know, we take personally what we feel so much, we're willing to hurt other people and blame other people for how we feel. This is in your consciousness. That's as far as ownership goes here. It's happening in your, if I go like this, that's my fingertips that are making a sound and my fingertips that are feeling that. But if you do that, I would feel that. But if I do that, will you feel that? You sure?
I don't know.
It might sound like a kind of an obscure, where is he going with that one? Really consider the differentiation between my feelings, your feelings, my thoughts, your thoughts. Look closely at these, please. Otherwise, when I say it doesn't matter what happens, that is even a more distant concept that is very difficult to arrive at through thinking about it. It has to be seen. If you see it, then for 13 seconds, you may care intensely what is happening here because that is what dependent origination is allowing you to do. But there's no clinging, there's no fascination with it, particularly, and especially no fixation. So therefore, that whole thing can come apart and the whole thing will go in another direction. And the consciousness that is here or there or anywhere, since it's no longer fascinated or fixated on anything, you're liberated. If a palm tree falls over, you're not separate from it. Please consider what I'm saying. You don't have to believe what I'm saying, but consider it. Yes, sir.
Shoto Bowing, are you saying that the teaching that it doesn't matter what happens isn't at the expense of things mattering?
Yes, I'm saying that. What fundamentally matters is that we save beings from suffering. Is that we see that people are suffering and frustrated and beating each other up, killing each other, imprisoning each other, manipulating, abusing each other, so that they can have the feeling of, because they're so convinced they are somebody who's suffering. The way they get rid of the suffering is to put that suffering onto someone else, torture someone, or murder them, abuse them, control them, make a lot of money, and then control everyone, which is what's happening all over our world right now in so many different forms. Huge avalanche of war and peace, war and peace, war and peace. Yes.
Kelsey Bowing. So the irritation that you had just now, is it that it feels personal at first and then it changes,
It feels personal all the time. It feels personal, but there's no person. This is what I'm asking you to, all of you are sitting here and all of you are online. I'm asking you to look at the wall, look at the floor, look at the backs of your hands, look at something that is not moving and observe what moves in the mind to keep it, make it very minimal, come right down to a very simple, basic point. In Zen, it's called still point, the still point, where everything just stops moving and you begin to see what continues to move. And is there anything moving? Find out. And that way, by training your mind in that way, when you get up and interact with your fellow human beings, your husband, your wife, your son, your daughter, your girlfriend, boyfriend, or your Dharma companions, you won't necessarily be attached to or believe in your thoughts. So my way of saying that, you won't care how you feel. That's a powerful statement to understand, to have in negative positive, neutral, any kind of emotion can come and go and cannot find an identity of someone who feels that way. It's just a feeling. It's not the person. So therefore, no agenda or propaganda is built up about somebody, about they shouldn't, and they start to get paranoid about what people are going to do or what they have done or how they mistreated us. You all know what I'm talking about. I'm not speaking Armenian.
So growing bowing, you don't use the word legacy. Is there a reason? Is there something about the word legacy that doesn't resonate for you?
Hard to spell. Legasy, SIE.
See,
No, I don't mean to. I'm not mocking your question. I'm just saying that I'm not saying there isn't a legacy. My legacy, if I have any legacy at all, it's in you. It's in people that are listening to what I have to say, and it's in my Dharma ear, Jazan. And I don't know what I have no idea. And does it matter? No, it doesn't matter what happens. What matters is the intention. I have the intention to rattle your cage until you see that there is no cage. And that may not be comfortable for you. And it's going to get worse. I'm getting older and older and feeling more and more cranky. Yes,
Future bowing,
I'll come back to you.
if we start to see our personality change depending on who we're with, it feels like we're a different person.
Isn't that
to other
interesting? It's
people.
very good. Could you say that again? Because that's a very interesting dynamic that happens with all of us. And I don't want to just brush by that. Could you say it again so everyone can hear louder?
If we start to see our personality changes depending on who we're with, and it feels like we're a different person to every person,
Yes.
why isn't that enough to show us that there is no solid self?
It is enough. It is enough. If you just receive that and you do nothing with it. But what we do is we do something with it. We might blame the person we're with and think that we can get away from that person. That's why it's been said that everyone is your teacher. Anytime you come in contact with anyone, some teachers are more difficult than others. Everyone, if you become a student, then everything is your teacher. You can learn from everything, everyone, every situation can be a teaching for you. But don't we all, do you have that experience? Do you seem to be different with different people you're with? You, I certainly do. I know I function differently as a teacher. So I don't have some kind of a blanket thing teaching that I give everybody other than sit down, hold still, and watch your mind. But like I think I was saying this morning when Chedan was giving his talk, we talked a little bit about Tonglen. Well, I don't teach that. I don't want to go into that so much. But there are some people I would teach Tonglen to. And I think maybe that might be a dynamic for them. Then others I would maybe never teach them that particular sending and receiving while riding the breath, receiving negativity with the in breath, sending out positivity with the out breath. It's too dangerous for people with very porous consciousnesses. So I don't, the world of the consciousness that is, when this body drops, the consciousness that you're going to be open to is, has no bounds, doesn't have boundaries. We're all headed towards that more.
Why do we have trouble just receiving that?
Fear. Because when we start to get where we start to receive that, some inkling of wisdom or just an open dimension or compassion, fundamental love for everything, no matter what, just fundamental consideration and carry for everyone, everywhere. The person who's treated us the worst, love for them. Not for what they did, but we see that they're confused, that they're banging their head on the wall and blaming you for it. So the compassion is ever going to rise. It would probably rise when you see that someone is torturing themselves and blaming you. And so what are you going to do? Fight with them or yell at them and say, it's not my fault, it's yours, or you're doing it yourself? How would you work with that? So that's why it's so important the word I use all the time is just receive. Produce as little as possible. Even if you're absolutely justified, you know that this person is an ass and then it needs to be pointed out to them. We can't let that person get away with acting like that anymore. So we're gonna save the planet from that, the version of that asshole. Lock them up, accuse them, or make sure that's in the paper. Look what they did. Look, we're doing it all the time. Less is better in that regard. When would I say more is better? You see, listen, see without adding, listen without particularly commenting or interpreting. It's very, very difficult to do. Yes.
Beyond bowing, you just spoke of a lack of boundaries when the body dies in consciousness.
Yes.
Is there a boundary shift that occurs when you see the truth before your body dies?
Yes.
What's happening in that boundary area that you're talking about?
The boundaries become situational. They fall in line with the fundamental understanding, which is pratitya samutpada, or dependent origination. So that's why it's been said that before enlightenment, chop would carry water. After enlightenment, chop would carry water. Nothing fundamentally changes. It can't be talked about relatively as some kind of something changed. I could say a little bit more about it, should I?
Yeah.
Nothing happens. All of the things that looks like things were coming and going, just stops. So then only what occurs is just what occurs. There's no commentary on it. There's no otherness to it. More?
So Gurren bowing, if what I call the legacy lives on through your Sangha member and your Dharma heir, and the vision that you have for this center is sort of confusing for Sangha, how do we align ourselves with the vision when you pass?
So get this built, invite people, no credential. They don't even have to have a cardboard sign saying I'm hungry. Just anybody that's here, anybody that hears about this. There's no promotion necessarily, just an announcement. Meditation or mindfulness classes every night at 6 o'clock, no charge. And then if you do need to charge, let's charge someone else. Let's try to get money from people who are aligned with that, or possibly maybe there's some foundations that aren't particularly arming countries to go to war that might. There's one right down the street here called Kellogg Foundation. They won't help you do bricks and mortar, but if you have a program, they might consider it. Then we get Andrea as a grant writer, aren't you? Yeah, so we get Andrea to write us a grant. And I'll take it over to Kellogg's. Well, I won't be here, but you will be. And so if you want to know the fruit vision, we'll build this one, and then we'll build one in Marshall, and then we'll build one in Kalamazoo. But we might change it based on what this looks like. We might modify it. The idea is to invite people to do something very simple. Come in, not teach Buddhism. If they want to learn that, they can come into this monastery. But there's no promotion going on to try to get someone to graduate from mindfulness practice into studying Zen or something like that. That would be up to them. No promotion. So more about it.
So Gurren bowing, so to summarize, you're asking us to teach meditation and ask for money.
What? Okay, I'm asking you. That's the legacy.
So Gurren bowing.
Meditation, ask for money.
Ask for money.
I've never heard it simplified that. Say you want. I'm up here and say. So, yeah, ask for help. mean, there's nothing wrong with asking for help to do something. That's what we're doing. We're endeavoring, just like we're doing here, or we're doing with this campaign. Sounds kind of simple, but maybe there's not much more to it than that. More. Sir.
Shoto bowing, how do we work with relative agreements with people? When we have an understanding that it doesn't matter what happens, but the other party doesn't.
So you do it both, you do both at the same time. It's called, the fancy word for this is Advaita, non-dual. It's an ancient teaching, goes back to the Upanishads, even further. There are no two things anywhere. But if you're in the illusion and you're working with people that believe that they're in the illusion, and you see that you believe that you're in the illusion, you also have an understanding that's going beyond that, because you've heard these teachings and you've begun to work on that. Otherwise, why would you, if you don't have some glimmer that everything's an illusion, what are you listening to me for? I'm not trying to chase you away. I'm just saying with great confidence, I don't need proof. I don't need evidence. I'm not a detective anymore. I was for a while. You don't need proof of this. You just need to see what everything that you need to know is right in front of you. This is called the jewel mirror samadhi. The samadhi is not separate. The jewel mirror means a very, very valuable situation where you look at something and see that it is mirror-like. In other words, you are looking at consciousness only. This transcends everything, transcends life and death, transcends all the polarities. You think of any polarity, all you have to do is think of one thing and you'll find its opposite. Transcends all of that. It's consciousness. You want to know what this biological form is? You call me, you tuck in bed every night, or you take to the bathroom, or run past the refrigerator and say, who left the door open? Everything's gonna, you know how that happens? That seems so real, but it's relatively real. It's not ultimately real. And I'm endeavoring to point you to your consciousness so you can see that the fundamental understanding is this is ultimately real. It does not matter what happens. Does it matter? Of course it matters, but it matters on a level that we can address in a very pragmatic way. We don't necessarily want to take that something matters and just trash everything. It's a spiritual path, not a mundane path, but it does not leave the mundane path behind. We need a building. We need food. We need clothing. In this case, with the clothing we have and many people are wearing monk's robes so that you can remember what your life is about. Your life is devoted to others. If you're wearing a monk's robe and your life isn't devoted to the service of others, you're relieving the suffering of others, however that shows up, then you might want to consider putting that robe on the shelf and going back to doing whatever you thought was interesting or fun or valuable before. Go ahead.
Beyond bowing, how are you consciousness only and Sokuzan Bob Brown?
Don't use that name. Just say Bob Brown.
Bob Brown.
Okay. What do you want to know?
How are you consciousness only and Bob Brown?
Just like that. Not separate. It's not separate. You're the one that put in the and. I didn't. You see what I'm saying? A little bit? Just a little bit. The mind just does that. We want a position. We feel threatened. I'm not saying you feel threatened, but I feel threatened. But I don't care because nothing is threatened. I often say, I've been saying this for years, trying to get you or anybody to come and challenge me. If you think I'm full of myself, or if I'm arrogant, you're probably right. I am. I'll do anything to help you, including look like a fool, look like I'm full of myself. That's what this is about over here. Yes.
Hondo bowing. You started by saying that in 2010-ish, 2011, you started a monastery.
Yeah.
And that seems like that was a goal, but you've often told us that it wasn't a goal. It was based on whoever showed up. So what is the difference between having a goal and you tell us it doesn't matter what happens and what you did in receiving.
It doesn't matter what happens over here. The intention is to do this. There's a good chance we'll be able to do it. And we need money to do it. Of course, we're already out past the leading edge of a monastery. The monastery showed up when a few people came and wanted to be monks. Where can I go and be a monk? They saw that I was a monk. I said, why not right here? And they said, I think it was two people, Chazan and also Shoka, who are both now monks. Talked about that. Seems like there was one other person, but I think that person left. Yes, they did leave, as a matter of fact. They decided they didn't want to do this. But that was just very situational, but there was no intention to start a monastery particularly. But somebody asked me that, and it happened at the same time. They asked me then, well, you could stay here. I've just spent several decades training my mind. Didn't really have any experience living in a monastery, but I'd had enough experience being around that whole milieu of the way the mind is trained enough to see that I wasn't going to do it according to anybody's pattern. I was going to do it according to what I was seeing. And that's the same thing with the Community Mindfulness Center. I do this. I didn't think of the Community Mindfulness Center. Uno did. You remember that? I think we were standing and said, why don't we make this so a Buddha Hall? And then I think together we thought, well, it could also be a mindfulness center. Do you remember how that surfaced? It went different directions for a while. We weren't sure what we were going to do. It just did its whatever it needed to do. There was no real plan. But then as things came together, it came more like, well, we need to do this. We should do this. And then you came along. We saw we could put you to work more.
Divine, what's limiting about a goal? So we have this goal of a community mindfulness center, but you refuse to.
Don't fasten on. Don't fasten on it. Don't return to the goal, because every time you return to it, it changes slightly. Have you noticed how it changes? The height of the roof just changed because of cost, and it's quite entertaining. I'm sure you might not call it entertaining, but it's quite entertaining to see the way the architect and the builder work around and try to continue to figure out ways to get our business. And are willing to, we change this way, and then they say, okay, we can lower the roof. Haven't you noticed that? What have you noticed that goes the other direction, that actually stops us or slows us down? Say it.
Money.
Not just money, I'm saying from their end. And I don't mean to criticize, we need their help, but I'm saying, don't you want to say something about that?
Divine, they interpret what you say and they are trying to solidify it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll have to say it. They don't do what they say they're going to do. Have you noticed that? So it changes our dynamic. But I don't want to get into the logistics of that whole thing. That's a very difficult area sometimes. We're still working on it. We need your help. We want to do this. I want to do this. And when I say outcome doesn't matter, you can come back and say, well, outcome doesn't matter. Why should I give you any money? Go ahead and say that. Want to say that? Yeah, you got any money? That's probably why you don't want to say that.
But some people have said that.
Sure they have, and they should. We have I know someone who's a multi-millionaire that could probably just buy the whole thing, but they're not about to do it because they don't do bricks and mortar, and they have a right to do this. They're the ones who've made the money. Although, did they make the money? You can't just up and make money. You have to have a particular way of working with everything, a whole society, your education, the very intelligence you're born with, the culture you're born into, the family you're born. I mean, everything plays a part in that. You can't just be born Shanjian and decide you want to be an attorney. You have to be born an attorney, don't you? Yes.
Shadow bowing with the idea of it doesn't matter what happens in the community mindfulness center. I wondered if it would be helpful to go in how that wasn't the first thing that even came up over here. Like there's already been work with architectural drawings or another idea.
Oh, if you can elaborate on that, I'd be happy to look, because that's how things work. We were going to build a library, a different opening. We spent, millions, not millions, thousands of dollars on what most people would call false starts. Or, oh, we don't want to do that, but if these things just change. And I'm not in here to hold anything still. My main interest here is to help you, each one of you, if I look at any one of you in the face, and what do I want for that person? I want you to see who you are before your body goes back into the elements, which you may not think is going to happen. It's pretty much happened here. The body isn't gone, but the mind is completely shot. There's the desire for this or that. This is a desire. The yes is there and it's very intense. So guard your pocketbook. Yes. Know that other person right next to you there. Go ahead.
So what's in it for you if we see who we are? I mean, why do you want that?
I
for us
become
to know?
famous. I become famous. Isn't he the guy that started the Community Mindfulness Center?
Franchise.
Yeah. See, now this is where that idea came from. Franchise. So I might have some ideas, but that's where this comes from. It's always done with others. Just like the monastery was done with Sokuzan. I'm not saying that Sokuzan couldn't have left and gone back into his training, working with plants, bugs, rocks, and weeds. Isn't that what he said? Isn't that what you do, Sokuzan? Where are you? You know, in all the things that he was trained in. But he didn't. He decided he wanted to come this direction, so that's why he's here. And that's why he's a Dharma teacher. So that if he had not come, would Shoka was here then. The other fellow, the Kaizen, was here, and that dynamic Kaizen was here, was very interested, but then he decided to go another direction, so that didn't happen. So you can't really see the causes and conditions are so complicated. It's really hard to say what's going to happen next in any direction. Yes.
Kelsey Bang, if it doesn't matter what happens, why, I guess the same question you now maybe is asking, why do you care if we see who we are before our body?
Because it's not an occurrence. If it's an occurrence, then we're right back to trying to improve ourselves, be better. I'm not against that. Some, all kinds of approaches to psychology, C.G. Jung, Alfred Adler, Freud, and you probably know more than I do, being a psychologist yourself. So all kinds of ways of working with the mind as a particular emotional, mental, and intellectual dynamic that is contained within a human form. But what is misunderstood there is a deeper dimension of that, which is consciousness only, which is not a separate being. It's just consciousness. And you, in a living form, as a human being, as a woman, you can actually return to that consciousness and have no goals, yet there's all kinds of goals. Have no desires, yet desires are everywhere. But take no position on anything. It's done in consciousness. It's like you disappeared, but you're not going anywhere. That's why it's often said nothing happens. So therefore, you can work with the polarity of something happens, nothing happens. And so by this kind of a teaching, doesn't matter what happens, is contrary to it does matter what happens. So all I'm doing is taking the opposite pole for a while, but I can just as easily go the other direction. More about it if you have it. Hard to ask questions in this area that will actually get something out of this area here that actually is going to be fundamentally helpful to everybody. Go ahead.
Sokuzan, does everything that appears to happen cover up who we are?
Only if you cling to it or grasp at it or reject it or shut up. If you do something with it. But everything that appears to happen, it just appears to happen. Very much like watching a movie all the time. Do you enjoy commercials? The best part of the movie. No, it's not. There, shut them off.
Adriana bowing.
Go ahead, Adriana.
If we feel very magnetized by something, a situation or a person, does it matter if we move towards that or not? Bowing.
in terms of the title of the Dharma talk, doesn't matter what happens. So again, it's a very relative situation. There's no standard. When I say nothing, doesn't matter what happens, I'm not trying to set up a standard. I'm just saying you can consider really look at the attachment to anything, any kind of outcome, and see that you really can't make any demands on anything. You have no control over all that. It's just an amazing understanding that is not occurring to an individual person. It's just an understanding. So I would say the only way I can respond to that is say sometimes it's going to matter and sometimes it's not going to matter. It's just a very relative situation, but ultimately nothing matters.
Bowing. How can I relate that to the imperative for truthful communication or to communicate truthfully if nothing matters? Bowing.
Well, there's no way you can open your mouth without lying. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm not accusing you personally. I'm constantly lying. I've been saying this for years. Don't believe anything I'm saying. Find it yourself. Find the truth yourself. This is a relative structure that is relatively real. This is relatively real and has the other illusion is duration or time. That is unreal. Yes.
So Corinne Bowing, today, one of Atisha's teaching slogans was about investigating the unborn mind.
Yes.
How do you investigate the unborn mind?
How do you uninvestigate it?
Yes. How do you investigate the unborn mind?
How do you investigate something that is unborn?
Yes.
You can't. That's how you investigate. You see, there's no way you can investigate. Why? Because mind is unborn. And why can't you investigate it? Because an eye can't see itself. Use a simple, kind of a silly statement. You can't actually see this. That's how you see it.
So Corinne Bowing, if I can't do what you teach and I can't see what you see and I can't believe what you are teaching.
Careful there. Can't believe what I believe. And what do I do? Does it look like I'm believing something?
I can't believe what you're teaching.
I'm not asking you to believe anything.
If I can't do anything that you're asking, what does it mean to be a student?
Anything that I'm saying or anything that is happening, first receive it from this teacher and then see that everything is your teacher. You have to see it. You can't just play around with it. You have to really have a teacher. This is why quite often spiritual organizations end up turning into cults or turning into something that serves or looks like a cult. Where people get so attached to the teacher, doing what the teacher says. It even says this in the Buddha Dharma, everything the teacher says that I will do. This is a medieval teaching. I'm not sure it's so valuable now. I think situationally, there are times when that may be the only way that a person could work with it, is to do that. But it's a situation. It's not a broad thing where you have to obey the teacher. If you were to sit and talk to anyone in here who's been a student of mine for as long as you have, or thereabouts, and ask them to write down what it's like to relate to me, you won't find anybody that will come anywhere near the way you talk about this relationship with you and me. Might have some similarities, but it's totally different. Do you see what I'm saying a little bit? Does anyone else have a question in that area, especially along the lines of what I'm saying? The way I relate to Senshu, the way I relate to Mozogu, the way I relate to Biyun, or anyone, or to Fayun, different, very much different. Not because I'm so such a wonderful, insightful person. It's just that this functions as a mirror. Not because I think I'll mirror people back and somehow have this great spiritual transformation. I'll help this person do that. No, I'm not separate from you. You go into hell, I'm there. You go into heaven, I'm there. Not me, the old man, but the consciousness. I watch you come and go. Watch my wife, and my closest student. I watch Isan, who is my Jisha today. I watch what's happening. And if I see an opening where there's some aspect of what's happening with you where you can receive, then I may point to that. And if I see an area where you're shut down and you've given me permission to teach you, I may knock on that door and may not be too comfortable. You already know what I'm talking about, don't you? Or don't you? We have a question about that? Question?
How can we, Isan bowing, how can we learn? How can we see our true nature by observing how you interact with us?
Because what is happening is I'm just encouraging you to train your mind, and then we might discuss the obstacles you're running into and the situations you're dealing with in your relationships or in your work or in your mind stream. So just it's so different with each person. Some people are encouraged to practice in this way. Some have even told people in some occasions to stop practicing. Don't meditate for a moment. Stop practicing. Don't meditate. I've told some people that are living here to leave this area, leave the monastery. It's rare for that to happen, but sometimes it needs to happen. Just a minute. Go ahead.
Isan bowing, you pointed out accurately that you interact with each of us differently and it's mirror-like. If we're paying attention,
Yes.
Can that help us see
Yes.
our nature?
Yes, but if you're interpreting anything over here that's coming towards you, then you're shutting the teacher out. You're shutting out the teaching. You're shutting out the world. Not because the teacher is so amazing and so fantastic, and you have to have this incredible, Mr. Professor or something like that to point out everything to you. It's more intimate than that. It's overwhelmingly powerful. And each person, you're wiring yours, everyone in here. You come this way, that's what you're going to get from this person. There's a solid person that's not here. There's still a human form, there's still consciousness here. And there's a consciousness that had two teachers who were students of the Buddha's Dharma down through the centuries. Yes.
So Gurung bowing, is there any common thread in the way that you teach all of us, even though your teaching is different for all of us? Bowing.
So I don't know how, maybe there may be another question around it, but we're not separate. No one is separate from anyone else. But we take on the characteristics. We have very simply different skin color, different eye color, different hair color, different sexual orientation, different age, different intelligence level. And there's just so many differentiations happening there, and it's happening, and we tend to use those polarities just as much as just you can get up and leave the room and the rest of us are still here. Creates an incredibly intense illusion of separation when fundamentally nothing is separate. You can't leave this room. You can't ever leave any room anywhere. You can't go anywhere. Nothing moves. Nothing occurs. And yet what does occur is the illusion. So sometimes I stand up and dance around or fall over, bump into the wall, trying to say, this is unreal. so that you can see it. So there's a possibility something might shake loose in your mind stream that tends to be hooked onto something or all frozen like ice.
Is there a right or wrong response to the teacher?
I don't think there's a right or wrong. But if there's a student, then the student will receive. And I'll,
Is there a right or wrong way to receive?
I think so.
Did you get me? If we are not a solid self, what are you mirroring back to us?
The illusion. You just had a interview with Sokuzan today. Can you see what happened in that? You don't have to go into the personality of the person, but did you see what happened in the Sokuzan?
Sure.
You remember it?
Vaguely,
Interesting that you would use the word vaguely, because I remember it vividly. And I don't remember a lot. But I know it's about you and your relationship dynamics. I'm very clear on those, but I can't do it for you. And so what was my main feedback to you?
it's an illusion,
Well, what did I say to do about it?
just receive,
Huh?
just receive.
What else? My memory is returning to me. Practice, train your mind. Watch what moves so that you can eventually see that this is unreal. It seems so convincing. We're so sure of our thoughts and our emotions. And we have stories and proof, and we have evidence that this happened. She said, they did. And sure, that all happened. That's why this looks so much like it is occurring, it is real, but it's not.
You say that it doesn't matter what happens. Is that because it's unreal?
Yes. This is dependent. There isn't. You might come here, someone might come and say, oh, look what Sokuzan did, built a monastery. Well, I'm not saying that I didn't have something to do with it, but I didn't really do it. I just didn't get in the way of it. It looked like it was going to happen. It's not some kind of humility or something. It just, I didn't really do anything. Yes.
When we hold on to a goal or we're so fixated on a goal, what do we give up?
I can tell you, you give up all of the possibility, incredible possibility of what can happen in this illusion to fundamentally help others. Your own personal ideation around what you want and you're grasping and the greed about wanting success. I'm not saying you can't do that. Some people are born into this world in such a way that they were gifted with just the ability to make money and have power. You see them everywhere. How did they get there? We call it good karma, bad karma. However you wanted to interpret it. But the important thing here is to see the truth yourself. Intend to see the truth. I'll help you do that. Sit down. That's why we have Denkaway, so that not so people can that something's going to happen overnight, but a way to sit still in an environment where people have a similar interest, wanting to understand what the Buddha pointed at 2,500 years ago, and other teachers have pointed at down through the centuries. See what this is yourself, so you fundamentally know. As I've said on several occasions, I would love to have walked out of that high school over there in 1959 and walked into a community mindfulness center instead of into the Marine Corps, where I was taught how to murder people. So you can take that off, you can take that and say, well, we have to defend ourselves. What if nobody had, what if my dad hadn't gone to Germany and been blown off the back of a tank in 1945? Hitler would have taken over. I mean, there's just so many ways that you can look at it, you can justify warfare, you can justify building atomic bombs, and I'm not denying that. But that's because you're talking about an avalanche that has been going on for centuries. And just because the Buddha arose 2,500 years ago and taught a few thousand people about the nature of the mind, and a few of those people talked to a few other people, and we have what we call a lineage of people down through the centuries who talked to each other about this, taught each other, helped encourage people to train their minds. So therefore we would not have this if it weren't for the lineage, if it weren't for my teachers coming, one from Japan, one from Tibet. I would not be here. I don't know where I would be, but wouldn't be here. I'll take one final question and then we'll close. We're already way beyond the ordinary scale of time here. Go ahead.
Yoka Bowing, question from YouTube, or on YouTube from Mark. Mark Bowing, how do we consciously manifest positive, in quotes, change into our life and the lives of others while operating from a state of knowing that it doesn't matter and that positive, negative is illusory?
That's just exactly how you do it. You have to do it that way. You just, the whole thing you said, how do we operate this way? At the same time, we know it doesn't matter. That's how you do it. But the way in which that may be, that may show up is train your mind so you are no longer get your idea of meaning or value or of the truth from anybody, including the Buddha, including me. You don't get it from anybody. As was said earlier today, I don't know, maybe I said it, maybe somebody else said it. I can bring it back up. I don't know if I can, but when I began to understand what Buddhism was, it came apart because it's just a pointer that is pointing at the truth, and it just comes apart when you begin to see what it's actually pointing at. How did that show up in Chazon's talk? You remember? No. You remember?
It was about the antidote.
The antidote. Thank you. If you see and understand what it means by antidote, then that's all you have to do. And Buddhism is an antidote to the war and peace and the constant turmoil and the suffering of samsara. The teaching of the Buddha is life is suffering, the cause is desire, the goal is cessation, and the path is train your mind to see what is true. And what is true? There's no single person anywhere. So what's actually suffering? Find out. Stop trying to push away the suffering and find out who suffers. Who enjoys pleasure? Who suffers? Find out the identity. It's mistaken identity. If you think otherwise, perhaps I'm wrong. I don't know. Thank you so much for your attention.
Hi, my name is Sokuzan, and I'm one of Sokuzan's monks. Sokuzan so freely offers his love to us and his wisdom through these talks and never asks us for anything in return. If you value what he does and what he is and want them to continue, please visit our donate page at SokukoJi.org. Thank you.